All right, so we apologize for taking a little while to get to this, but it has been a hectic week, and it is still hectic as we speak, but we took a little time, set it aside to do this, so let's jump right into it. This is the Longlegs spoiler discussion. I took some feverish notes about an hour ago, just going over all my thoughts of the film and everything, and once again, if you did not catch the spoiler-free discussion, we gave our thoughts there. But one of the things that I had said there that I will repeat here, because it's even more so now, is this is a film that has grown on me even more. And I loved it. Right? So this isn't like, well, I liked it and it's growing on me. No. I loved it. And I was like, this is something that I'm liking more as I think about it, as opposed to other films. When I think about them, I like them less. And this is one that just like every time I think about it, I'm just like, oh no, I love this. I love this so much. I love this so much. So this isn't a film for everyone, as we all know, but we are here to discuss the meanings and what our takeaways are on a one-time watch, having been in a theater, going off memory of a film I saw a week ago, 6 days actually, and just kind of jotting down as many notes as I could possibly remember. So let's jump in, shall we, to Longlegs. Okay, so I think the first thing I would like to talk about is, we'll kind of keep this in order as we can, but I have a lot to say, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on everything that I have to say. I know that you wanted to watch this again before we did this. I wish we had the option. We do not. So I think I did a very good job of taking down mental notes days later in a very comprehensive way that I feel will be satisfied in the end. Okay. Because sometimes we walk away from these and I'm like bummed. Wait, especially after we see them. And sometimes we just want to do them again later because we have the chance to rewatch and blah, blah, blah. So getting into the first scene of the movie, we get spoilers, right, guys? We're going to get into spoilers. So we get a as yet to be revealed young Lee Harker, and she is seeing Longlegs for the very first time. The very first word that we hear him say is cuckoo, which is what gets her attention. Yeah. Her response to that, I think she says something like father. So we'll get into some theories there, but I do want to put out this note, which I think is super interesting. So there's an actual phrase called cuckooing. And this is I actually wrote down the definition of it. Cuckooing is a practice where a person takes over a person's home and uses it for exploitation. So the fact that he's saying cuckoo, I know that later in the film when he's in that like hardware store, he does kind of like the cuckoo clock thing. Yeah. And he's like cuckoo, cuckoo. So I don't know if that's like, maybe he's going to take over their house eventually if things don't work out with Lee. I don't really honestly know there. Go ahead.
I don't think it's so much the house as it is the body, like the person as the house, as the dwelling. Vessel. Yeah. I think it's more about that, and especially with the dolls that are made, I think those are very symbolic of obviously the kid in the house, but right. Maybe also of like something that he can go into, although it really seems more like the kids that the dolls are made after have like, it's like they're a Horcrux or something, almost like there's a piece of them in it, which I know we'll get to later on, but I had no idea that was a thing, cuckooing. Yeah.
So of course it derives from like a bird that goes into a nest, takes the eggs out and like poses as the bird and like gets fed by the mother or something.
Well, that's perfect for the dolls, especially.
Sure.
Because he leaves them there.
So I don't know. I have to assume that's what Osgood was going for, having looked that up. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get confirmation on these things, if we get like a commentary or whatnot.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I really love the aspect ratio in the beginning of the film and the way it changes, like how it's in that square, like
4x3.
Yeah, the 4x3. It looks all old school, and I think that just like the opening of this movie is very striking. Like seeing just the White House and the snow, and she's wearing like a red jacket, so she stands out. I think that that's all just very visually very pleasing and disturbing to look at too, because there's something about the emptiness of the whiteness or the purity of the whiteness and the
I would
red
say,
in
yeah,
it, right?
The purity.
Yeah.
Right, is that we have something that starts very pure.
Yeah.
You have a child in the snow, and then you have this devil that comes. And I definitely think there's symbolism in that, and also when not only is it shown in that format because that's how like home videos would look back then in the 70s, and then once the time passes, the screen opens up like not only the passage of time but the passage of like technology, going from that kind of footage to other wider screened footage. So it's a good way of showing passages of time. But getting to Nick Cage's face, which was hidden in the promotional material for this film, we see that he was a glam rocker of some sort, and he seems to be very obsessed with the band T-Rex. I think this is important because he is like in the 80s, even though the glam rock look was very like feminine and like unthreatening in a way. Like if you look at a lot of those guys, they look kind of like sissies, right? But a good amount of them, like Motley Crue and such, were like shout at the devil. Like they had a lot of like satanic lyrics, and that's when a lot of the satanic panic was happening, and there was lyrics and whatnot that were very satanic, and I have to believe that now this is in the 70s, so he's getting into it a little early there, but I think he's in some kind of a rock band. Somehow he gets entranced in some way, because I have theories on what happened to him, that he was a survivor in the past, and that's what led him to like satanic music, and that before, like, he was a victim that survived, much like Lee, but he's still being held captive, or he protected someone like Lee's mom or something like that. But he could have just gotten possessed by the devil, or worships the devil because of the music that he got into, and that's like tied to music and Satanism, right? Like that's usually like married together in film. So I think that his look, with his distortion of his features and him trying to look a certain way or act a certain way, I think it all plays into the devilish nature of his character. As far as like Longlegs goes, so there's a bunch of different like ways that you could take Longlegs, right? So the few different things that I thought of. So originally, my very first thought, and I leaned over to you in the theater and said this when it happened, he was like, something along the lines, I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot because we're just going off of memory here, but he says something along the lines of like, I wore my long legs today, like apologizing to Lee. And then he's like, what if and then he like leans down to her level. So I took it in the theater as, maybe he thinks he's a child. This is what made me think, well, maybe he was also like the 9-year-old Lee at one point.
Yeah.
And because the memory gets distorted through those voodoo dolls that he makes, maybe he thinks of himself as 9, and because he's aged, he's gotten taller. And in being tall, while he thinks he's 9, he's like, I'm sorry, I put on my long legs today. Like, I shouldn't be this tall. Like, let me come down to your level. So there's that interpretation. That was my first interpretation. Then there's the obvious interpretation of, like, daddy long legs, right? Daddy is always put before long legs. And this is an interesting note, and I do wonder if there is some kind of symbolism in this. So Osgood Perkins said this movie was about his family. Now, Anthony Perkins, his father, who played Norman Bates in Psycho, he died. He was secretly gay, or at least bi, and died of AIDS-related complications when Oz would have been pretty young. So he was kind of raised... I don't know how old he was, but he definitely didn't have a dad for a good amount of his life. Anthony's been dead a long time. And his mother, this is insane, died in 9/11.
Oh my gosh.
She was on one of the planes that crashed into the buildings.
Oh wow. I had no idea.
I don't know what plane it was. It could have been, it wasn't Flight 93. That I'm pretty positive about. So it could have been the Pentagon one. It could have been the Twin Towers ones. I don't know, but his mom died. So if this guy doesn't think the world's out to get him,
wow.
I don't know who would. But the point being is that Longlegs almost acts as Lee's father in a way, right? And I was wondering if there's some kind of, symbolism, messaging in here, because Lee is the only one who seemingly doesn't have a father. This broken home is actually what saves them, kind of, right? Because the dad is supposed to do the killings. There is no dad around, and we never get a mention of a father. Now, could you speculate that Longlegs is her father, and that the mom is like scared to see him, like, oh shit, maybe she had a fling with some rock star back in the day, got pregnant, and then he came for her, and that's what led him down the path of the 14th, because his daughter's birthday is on the 14th. I don't know. I don't think so, but it's interesting because it's Daddy Longlegs. So I don't know, but then the third and last interpretation here is that he sees himself as like a serpent, and this is his human form. He's put on legs, right, to appear as a man.
Yeah.
So those are my three interpretations of what the name Longlegs means, because we find out his name, and it is not Lon G Legs like I had originally.
You're joking about that.
I had originally hypothesized.
Yeah.
His name is like something Cobble.
Yes. I think those are all interesting interpretations for sure. A couple things. I do think just what you were saying, like, about his appearance, I love that we don't really fully see him. Like, he kind of, like, it's like a flash when she turns, or whenever he turns around.
When he just comes down into the frame, you mean that?
Yeah.
In the
Oh, yeah, right. When he comes down
like
into the frame.
Yeah. But he's younger there, so that's like makeup where they've made him appear younger than he is.
Yeah, but he still looks very, very striking.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's not going to say his name.
I can't find his name. Anyway, so I do love his look in this. I think it's very iconic. I think it's probably one of the most memorable looks in horror movies in general, really. I think it's very striking. And from what you were saying too, I think those are all really interesting theories about Longlegs. I would be curious if there is some like saying involving Longlegs, like the cuckoo thing, that we maybe have never heard, or that is, like a folk saying. I would be really interested in that. I do like the idea that he's a snake, because the serpent has very satanic symbolism in that. Yeah. And as far as the whole father thing, I definitely think that's like majorly important for the movie, and something that when we do rewatch it, like, I want to be paying more attention to the families and the dynamics and everything. But you're right, like, the dad is the one in all of these cases. If you read any of the extra content that was put out in marketing on the website, it's always the father killing the family, and her not having a dad is definitely something that changes her fate. Yeah. And I do totally think that he takes on a type of a role as a father figure in some way, and it's a very disturbed and messed up relationship for sure, but there is something about that broken family aspect, like you said, we said saves her, but is also, it's just an interesting part of the trauma with everything. And I'm very curious to rewatch it and see how that plays out again.
Well, you could also look at it as, some kind of messaging that a father is prone to violence and a mother is prone to protection, right? When the father is dealt this hand, he kills his family. Mm-hmm. When the mother, without a father, is dealt this hand, her reaction to this is to protect her, sells her soul to protect her daughter.
I mean, she still ultimately kills people, of course, because she goes off.
But she cares about her daughter more.
She doesn't kill her daughter. Yeah, she kills other people.
You're right. Yeah. I guess prone to violence, but domestic abuse, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is an interesting distinction, though. I mean, there's definitely still violence happening, but it's like one is directed at the family, and then the other is directed outward. Which is interesting. It is very interesting. There's so much about Longlegs that I also am just, I want more backstory about him, because I don't know if he was a victim of, if this is like some ritual thing that's been going on for years and years and he's a past victim. Like, I think that's a really interesting take, but I don't know. I just want to know more, though.
I want to know more, but I don't.
Yeah.
I like the speculation. I like sitting here and talking about the pieces we get, and I do think his name has a purpose.
Totally.
Because we have to cobble things together for ourselves, right? I'm almost positive his last name is Cobble, right? That was like 99.9% sure. And the fact that we have to cobble all the pieces of his past together to come up with something. I think that's on purpose. Now, as far as him living down in the basement, all of the meaning of him living in the basement the whole time in her house, there's so much I could say about that. So there's so many different pieces of the film that reference this. So we are told about the man downstairs.
Yeah.
Right, we could even call him Mr. Downstairs, right? And they're like, downstairs from who? And he's like, downstairs from everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, he's referring to the devil, but he literally lives downstairs in Lee's house her whole life. Mm-hmm. After his mom makes the deal with him, he dwells there at the home. He's lived down there this entire time. And so he is literally the man downstairs, much like the devil. There's also another wonderful nod to that where, Lee asks him when he's in police holding, where is he? And she's like, he's right under your feet.
Yeah.
Which is literally how it was in her house her whole life. He's always been right under her feet. Mm-hmm. And under him is the devil. And it's like this hierarchy in reverse. It's like from the ground up, right? And I just love all of that. And how that plays into the wording of the film. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really, really fantastic. And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of hidden. Even the doll that they find at the barn, is under the floorboards and everything. So it's very interesting. I kind of lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
There's so much to talk about.
It's all right. I got plenty of notes. We'll keep on. If you remember it, we're good. So there's a lot of backwards symbolisms going on in here. So obviously the credits play in reverse, but some of the music is played in reverse. And of course this has to do with songs. Some bands actually did give into this. Others was just, satanic panic of the time, where if you play the records in reverse, it'll conjure a demon or whatever. Yeah. So that is played into with here, which I love. Now, getting into the opening scene with our adult Lee, number one, when it comes to her performance, this performance is very important because we learn in the film. Now, throughout the film, you could see this as some kind of like lifeless performance. But this, of course, is on purpose because we find out that she has been kind of possessed this entire time by her doll. Yeah. Her doll still exists, and this is what links her to Longlegs. I think that her performance in this is perfectly suited to that revelation later in the film. And, I think it's a bold thing because it could be looked at as kind of a deadpan performance throughout the film where people are like, I'm not connecting with this chick. She's so lifeless. And it's like, she is lifeless. She's soulless, basically. Like, her soul is trapped in this ball, I think. I don't know what exactly is in the brain ball in the doll's head.
I know.
But once it's expelled from her and her mother says, you're free now, that literally is some kind of imprisonment of her soul or her freedom or whatever. And so this performance feels that way. And when she breaks out of that trance, I think for the rest of the film, we're not going to see much of a different person because she's been like this her whole life. It's not like she's going to snap out of some trance and be like a totally different person. Plus, she's dealing with chaos. I don't know why she would be any different than I got to get to where I got to get to and do these things. So her personality shouldn't change because we don't really see much more of her after the fact that happens. But just speaking on her performance, and it has a very good stark contrast against Cage's performance, which is much more bombastic and flamboyant.
Yeah. I had said in our spoiler free discussion that I thought that she gave this performance of kind of like a neurodivergent person, and I definitely connected to her in some sense. And I do think that's still part of the character to a degree, whether or not that was in intention. That's definitely how it comes across to me. But I do think that there's also a big link to the doll possession thing and childhood trauma especially, which can definitely impact people's personalities as they grow older. And she's not lifeless to me. Like, I see what you're saying, and I do think that some people watching it are going to be like, she has no character, like, what the heck? But I think that there's a lot of idiosyncrasies and subtleties to her performance that I really appreciated. One scene, of course, that comes to mind that I think is great is when she goes to her her boss's house and is meeting his daughter, and just the awkwardness and and everything there. But she's also like kind of trying to connect to his daughter, and I thought that was a very kind of bittersweet scene in a way. But one thing too that I want to talk about is how, initially on my first viewing, like when we watched this, I thought that, especially in the beginning, it is painted like she has psychic abilities, and I really loved that because I was like, oh yes, like it's gonna get weird. But it's not that I don't think she has psychic abilities, but I think that the reason she's able to figure anything out and has these hunches and intuitions is specifically because Longlegs, has been living under her. She has the doll. Like, I think she already has a link there, meaning like I don't know if if this was a totally different case that she had no connection to, if she would have the same kind of like intuitive capabilities, right? Because like in this very opening, they have the briefing at the police station, and she goes out with her partner, and she's just looking at a house and is like, he's in there, like he's in that house.
So I think it's deeper than that. I think what it is she has a connection to the devil. And what happens is she can feel this guy's presence, and this is all by design, right? So we're talking about the devil's plan. And the devil has a plan in place, and everything lines up. It's like dominoes in a row for everything to culminate to the climax that we get. So she goes on this case, and she feels this guy because this guy is working for the devil. He's an evil son of a bitch. They say, he's armed and he's dangerous, right? And the partner that she has doesn't believe it. It's just like, well, we're just gonna do our due diligence. We're not gonna just call it in on a hunch. And he gets shot in the head, right? This is a guy who immediately kills a police officer. He's known to be armed and dangerous, but when she walks in the room, he's surrendering, right? Because the devil's telling him, not her.
Yeah.
Right? And this is what gets her on the Longlegs case. Because she has this intuition and they need it for a case they can't solve, it's all part of the devil's plan. She's led to him so that he can give himself up so that she can get onto this case. It's dominoes in a row.
Yeah. I'm very curious about rewatching the scene when she's being tested at whatever FBI facility for her psychic powers, and there's
a specific thing in there, and it is that when there is a upside down triangle, she says father.
Yes, yeah, I noticed that. She says father and mother. I'm pretty sure. Doesn't she say mother?
I think she just says father.
Oh, I thought she said
for
both.
some other thing.
For something else though, but they're both said in there, which I thought, is definitely relevant.
Because the upside down triangle is heavily used in the marketing.
Yeah.
And is satanic in nature.
Yeah.
You notice it, and she says father.
Right.
Which I think she thinks the devil is her father.
The inverted triangle is supposed to be like the inverted Trinity, right? Kind of like an upside down cross. So I love that scene. I think so much of this movie, we talked about, like, last year we had When Evil Lurks, and it has a very evil, feels like an evil movie. This is another movie that just feels evil, like, all throughout it, and it's so dark, and I love the kind of unreality too that is woven into things. Like that whole scene, I think probably most people have seen the what is it called, the Rorschach test, which is like, there's a lot of really common, like, oh, like, this is how he tests psychic powers, like, is it a circle, but this is just like so psychedelic and trippy in a really dark way, and I love it. So yeah, I like that scene a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And so when she goes to visit her mother says, like, I kept everything. So got me thinking, because we see that she kept Lee's teeth in a bag. It says, like, Lee age 9 or 10 or something on it, right? Which is made me start thinking, like, okay, well, if she is a nurse, which this is important, right? Because we know Lee's mom to be a religious woman. She's also a nurse. So she's a godly woman, and she helps people. The devil flips that completely. She's a woman who now worships Satan, and she helps kill people, right? It's literally, he's flipped everything on its head, much like an inverted triangle, everything in reverse. As we talked about the structure from the ground up, everything is flipped for her. So she kept teeth, which makes me wonder, if she is a nurse, she would have access to medical records, which would be able to get Longlegs' birth dates, because he needs kids' birthdays, right? A 9-year-old. Every one of these families has a 9-year-old who has a birthday on the 14th. And she would also have access to their blood, hair, whatever, being a nurse. Maybe she was a nurse of all of these victims, right? Or she got into hospitals where they were treated or whatever. But for her, and here's another really important note with the mom. So at the end of the day, the devil isn't forcing himself onto anything here. I mean, it definitely appears that way. But the mom shows up at the door, and it's a trick, of course, because the devil's full of trickery. But it's like, you have a present here, like some kind of a present from the church, and they willingly let the devil into their house. Yeah. Right? It's a stranger at the door with this gift, and they let him in the house, and this is their demise, right? The devil doesn't force it. He doesn't just break into the house and kill you. He arrives at the door as like a welcome face. Yeah. And you welcome in with open arms, and they kill the family. There's also another really great scene, and we see it in the trailer, and we also see it here, where we think everything is shown from the perspective of the doll, right? Everyone's looking at the doll, but this, I think, upon further rewatch, will show that it was actually the mom that they were looking at, because the priest recognizes and is kind of like excited to see it, as opposed to, why would he have any recognition of the doll?
That's a good point. Yeah. So one thing, which
just kind of points out that she's anyway, go on.
I'm just trying to remember, because so that creepy figure that's also in the trailer, that's like the black veil and the red eyes. Yeah. Is that the doll, or is that her then? I mean, I know it's the devil ultimately, but like...
It's the devil. I mean, she flips back the veil, and it's the doll underneath.
It's the doll underneath. Yeah. Okay. Because that's what I was wondering, if it was from that perspective at all.
I mean, but once the doll's in the house, I think that she like it's already too late.
Yeah.
Right? Once the mom welcomes it in. So it's like the mom welcomes it in and then the dad like takes it in.
Yeah.
And does the killing for him.
It's I mean, it's great that it's not, you know, everything is very, it's like influencing. The devil's just kind of like, he does trick to get in, and then from there on it's just kind of sowing these seeds of hatred and violence that just sort of naturally bubble up in the people that's houses that she picks. And I think that's probably one of the scarier parts of the movie or the story in general, because, you know, whether or not these people are religious or not, that she poses as a nun coming, and so that kind of does disarm you because you don't necessarily expect the nun to be a harbinger of the devil. So it doesn't necessarily also mean that you are religious, because I think a lot of people would recognize a nun and be like, oh, okay, like they're bringing a toy for the kid. But it makes me wonder though if any of the families, I think from what I remember reading, now that I'm talking about it, I think some of them definitely were Christian.
They all were.
All of them were Christian.
All of them were.
Oh, okay.
We went through the notes.
Yeah.
So there's a website called thebirthaymurders.net.
Yeah.
And and on there they show like almost all of the cases of murder.
They're all Christian.
Happened, and they're all God-fearing, good Christians who just came home from church, most of them, or whatever.
So what the heck, man?
And I think that's the devil's game.
Yeah.
The devil is using their own faith against them. It's the fact that it's a nun coming to their door. I wouldn't let a nun in my house, personally.
I wouldn't.
If a nun comes
either,
to my door, I'd be like, no, thank you. And it's their religious faith that makes them welcome in the stranger, as to where someone who isn't religious would be like, sorry, no thanks, I don't want anything from the church. So your lack of faith in God would actually save you from the devil in this case, which is like adds to the hilarity of it for the devil. See, this is all for the devil's kicks. I guess that's a really good
point though too, because a couple things. They're in a rural area. Mm-hmm. Smaller town, so that's smaller towns in general. So people tend to be a little bit maybe more like welcoming, especially if they're in a religious community. But nowadays, of course, like if any religious person comes to your door and you're not of that faith, you're like, go away.
Your guard.
So that's a good point. But it is also something that I think kind of pops up frequently in satanic horror stories and just in general of the devil. If he can like turn a Christian, or like get somebody to basically, you know, not denounce, but, you know, like ruin their faith, it's even better for him because it's like, yeah, I got one of the ones that you got. Like,
it's kind of like vampires.
Because it's all a game.
Vampires drinking from a virgin.
Sure. Right?
It's like it tastes better.
Yeah. Like the taboo of it almost, or
like flipping a evil person or like someone without faith should be easy, but flipping someone who's like a devout Christian, that's like, you know, chef's kiss for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For how satanic this movie is too, and how much like religious horror is imbued in it, there's no saving from God.
Oh God.
At all.
No, that's
sucks.
like the wink and the nod, the literal kiss from the villain at the end of the movie. Like, you thought that there was going to be some saving grace here. No way.
No. Hail
Satan. The literal movie ends with Hail Satan.
Yeah.
Right? This is a fucking evil film.
It's really dark, yeah.
So let's move on over to Carrie Ann camera, because Lee gets once she deciphers. So she gets the cipher from Longlegs, and he says something like, if you tell him how you came to know how to decipher these codes, I'm gonna like cut off your mom's milk tits and bleed her dry or something like that, or bleed your mom or something. I don't remember exactly, but so she gets the cipher, which, you know, we'd already deciphered some of the code. So I was thinking about the cipher itself, right? So Longlegs is the cipher. You need to know what cipher it is, and you need to know what characters are. Now you can decipher this yourself on thebirthaymurders.net. It's complicated, but it can be done. We did it. But Longlegs is the cipher which she uses, but she knows the characters because he sent it in her birthday card, which this is the birthday card from her birthday when she was 9. But I also wonder if he signs all of the Longlegs cards. So because he's trying to, like, it's a message for her in the future, right? Like, he knows no one else is going to be able to figure this out because he leaves no other evidence behind. How the hell do you figure this out? Mm-hmm. And when you even decipher this shit, it's nonsense, right? But it definitely makes me wonder now, having known what I know, with the fact that I think that the messages are specifically for Lee and Lee alone, and that he's signing his name at the bottom, like, remember me? Like, I know because of your memory wipe, because of the doll and everything, that you don't really remember this. It's a way of, like, connecting all of it, but it's also like it's Daddy Longlegs. Like, remember me? We met when you were a kid. But I would like to know I'd have to go back and look. And I remember some of them for sure. And I'd have to see what the messages are and how they could be applicable to Lee as a character and his messages to her. Like, he's sending her messages knowing she'd be the one. Because he talks about, when he's in the interrogation scene with her, he says something along the lines of, like, when, she's asking him about the stuff. And he talks about how when she decided to go into law enforcement when she was 20... he laughed, and and it's like the seventh mother. I wrote it down. The seventh mother, law enforcement at 20. You had the chance of Crimson and Clover. I tried to look up the meaning of Crimson and Clover. I know the song. I couldn't really get an idea of, like, crimson being blood, or like the crimson god, like Satan, versus Clover, I don't know. I can't really make heads or tails of that. But he does talk about the seventh mother. It made me start wondering about, like, who he meant by the seventh mother. I tried Googling what the hell the seventh mother is. I was trying to think of who the seventh victim was and who their mother was. Was it Lee? Like, was Lee's mother the seventh victim that, he stopped at? Is he referring to Lee's mom? Like, that whole interrogation scene, which I fucking loved, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead because I did want to talk about Kieran Shipka's performance and that character of Carrie Ann, but what were you going to say?
Isn't there some saying about, like, I know there's a song, like, the seventh son of the seventh son or something, and but, like, I thought that there was some type of saying about the seventh daughter or the seventh child or whatever of the seventh child having magic powers, like having psychic abilities.
Yeah.
So I don't know I don't know if that's what this is in reference to, of course. And, but I agree with you. I think that scene, the interrogation scene, is awesome. It's so scary. It's so freaky. I think that Nick Cage's performance is just, through the whole movie, but especially in that scene, it's just wild.
Yeah.
It's really wild to watch. It's definitely, I think Micah Monroe said that it was a really visceral experience whenever she walked into the room to see him for the first time.
Well, we get the trailer that shows her heart rate when she saw him.
I think visceral is a great way to describe that scene, because there is definitely, like, the gore of him, like, smashing his head on the table, which is so gnarly. But just also the atmosphere and what he's saying, and just this sense of, like, he sounds like an insane person, and he is, but there's also this truth behind what he's saying that makes it even more terrifying. Yeah, sure. Because you're like, oh, it's not just mental illness. Like, this is real. No, yeah. This is really real.
Sure.
So, but yeah, we can talk about her character, Carrie Ann. I thought she's...
Shout out to the Black Ghost daughter.
Yeah, she's great. This actress looks like McKenna Grace to me. Yeah. That's who I thought it was for, like, half a second in the theater.
Yeah.
She looks so much like her to me, but I think she did a great job. I loved her accent and, like, the way she was speaking.
Yeah.
Really fascinating. They find her doll in the floorboards of the farm, and when they cut into it, because this kind of leads up to her appearance, obviously, the ball, which is bizarre, and you can already get the sense that, like, the ball is the magic item that is influencing people.
Correct.
Because the autopsy guy, the mortician, is like, I had these weird thoughts about like my wife or whatever.
Says, I thought I heard the whispering, and I thought I heard it whispering to me about my ex-wife.
Yes, yeah, right. So that thing is putting thoughts into people's heads, or at least bringing up like bad memories, bad emotions, whatever.
It makes them think about family.
Yes, specifically family. Yeah, that's a good point. And they don't know what it is. They don't know like what the substance is. And I think that aspect too is also really freaky, because it's like, what is this thing? Like, it's just this metal sphere that's in the head where the brain should be, and the hair is human hair.
Yeah. So little note here, which I think is interesting, and I just thought of it right now, but when they cut into the ball, he says there's nothing inside. Mm-hmm. Then they cut into the ball, and they also say, we found nothing, and they even show it. It's like empty, right? But when Lee's doll is destroyed later, and we'll talk about that later, but for the moment, let's talk about the fact that it gets shot, black smoke emanates, comes out of it. Mm-hmm. And then it also comes out of Lee's head. Yeah. We see it. But the two people that are there to observe that fact is the mom, who's already working for the devil, and Lee, who is also under the control of the devil. Right. So the fact that they both can see the black smoke does not mean that anyone else could.
Right.
But because they're the only two people there seeing it, makes me wonder if when that coroner, cut into it, or whatever he is, cut into it and didn't find it, he says there's nothing in it. There's nothing. He would have been like, a black smoke came out of it.
Sure.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
Right? But this is what wakes up Carrie Ann from her, comatose state, where she's just been sitting in a chair for years. And then Longlegs knows to come to visit her right when she comes to. Yeah. Right? So he is like, as I said, there's a plan in place. It's dominoes. It's ducks in a row. He's there. Tells her whatever, maybe to kill herself. I don't know. She jumps because she says, I would do anything for him. I'd jump out of a window if he told me to do it.
Yeah.
And then she kills herself. And I do wonder if this is because he told her to do so, because that's what completes, that part of his plan. That kid has to die, and then the other kid's supposed to die, and that's what eventually ends up completing the cycle there. Or if she just does so of her own accord because, she has nothing left. She's just lost her mind, and when this is freed, she ends her own life. I would assume he came there to tell her to do something, kill herself, because on that day specifically, and she says, I'd jump out a window. So it makes perfect sense. I would assume he told her to kill herself. Well, we don't see that conversation, but
yeah,
it does line up with everything.
Yeah, whether or not he tells her kill yourself on this date when he goes to visit her, or if there is some type of psychic link where he can communicate with her when he's not in front of her, I don't know, but she definitely, either way, she definitely gets told by him to, I think, do that, to jump out the window.
So to keep in mind here, though, like, her ball gets destroyed. This is what gives her the freedom to then kill herself. Once she's killed, Longlegs is able to be free of this because he has done everything that he can. Now all the plan is in place. He has no more purpose. Now he gets to do what he's been waiting to do, which he smashes his head like you would a doll to get into the brain, right? It's like what we do with the brain. The mom is also shot in the head by Lee when she is killed. Everyone's heads and brains are smashed in for them to be killed. There's
definitely some juxtaposition with Longlegs and the doll. I think there's even like a shot where there might be an overlay of a doll face and his at some point. Because I do think that he is ultimately just a vessel for like the evil, for the devil, essentially. I don't think that, and I was thinking too, because Carrie Ann, like, she's in this comatose state.
Yeah.
She's under the floorboards that the doll is. Yeah. I wonder if Lee's doll, I don't remember where the mom takes it out of. It's just outside. I don't think we ever. Up. So I wonder if like that doll wasn't kept, because it wasn't kept like underneath something. Yeah, like she still has some autonomy to her because the doll's being treated, differently versus Carrie Ann's doll is like quite literally like buried and like left underground with nobody around to interact with it. So it's like she goes into that state because that's the state that the doll is in. Maybe Lee's mom talked to the doll or whatever, right? Like, or even Longlegs.
If it's shown where the doll is in the house or something, I completely forget it, but I would assume it's probably down with Longlegs.
I would assume too, but I think being in the basement with Longlegs is different though than it being abandoned the way that Carrie Ann's was,
But this is part of the devil's plan, right?
Yes, no, I'm just saying that like how the...
You also have to take into consideration that Carrie Ann's mom did not work for the devil. So the devil would, not give her the freedom. And it isn't until her brain is destroyed that she's able to have consciousness again as to where, Lee's doll still has purpose. And so the devil allows her to use her brain. And her brain is what is psychic and leads him to Longlegs, which is the whole plan of it. But also I'd like to point out that it goes towards my original theory that maybe he has a doll as well, and that's why he bashes his head in, because once he's free of everything, he can, do it.
Definitely. I just was kind of wondering, I guess, if the dolls have some type of like a voodoo doll type effect, which I think they definitely do to an extent.
I agree.
And I like the doll symbolism a lot because not only is it creepy like visually, but also I think that it really points at this like depersonalization and disassociation, especially because of what I was saying earlier about like Lee having this childhood trauma, and the doll is literally the child version of her that's like keeping all of that. There's a shot too in her house when she's at her mom's house where there's like, because her mom's a hoarder and there's like a stack of objects and there is a doll like in it, which is great. But foreshadowing for sure.
There's interrogation scene. There's also a great scene where he's singing the happy birthday song, but then he looks around the room, I think before that, and he's like, and you'll be there, and you'll be there, and the birthday girl.
He's pointing to everybody.
From what that is, we have the captain who gets shot by the mom, and then the detective who ends up killing his family and getting himself killed. So he's like, you'll be there, and you'll be there, and she'll be there, because she's literally in his house at the birthday party, and she was driven to her house for her own birthday party, right? Because this is both of their birthdays. They're both born, I think this is Lee's birthday, is it not?
Yeah,
or is this,
it is.
It is specifically.
It is. I think so. Yeah, because they're like, it's next week.
So it's like a birthday party specifically for. It's two birthday parties,
Yeah.
and both are. She's being freed from her doll, and the other one is going the opposite direction. She's being put under the spell of her doll. So it's like a coming of age and whatever. So
yeah, I love that scene when he's pointing to everybody. I think it was super chilling. I was just like, oh, all these people, like he's pointing to them specifically.
But it's foreshadowing for their deaths.
Yes. And he knows it. It's like he's literally like seeing through the camera, through the TV at this. And I think that's terrifying. And anytime he sings, I hated it. Well, it was so scary. Oh.
So like, that song in the beginning where he's like, I'm gonna come for you or whatever. Not once, not twice, but like anytime I want.
Yeah.
He literally lives in her house.
I know. I
Right.
like it. We're never gonna live in a place with a basement.
A basement we don't know about. I mean, she didn't know that it was there. And
no, just no basement.
Yeah, right. And now, so the mom at the end here is like, I have to do this because, we'll burn in hell for all eternity if this isn't completed. Lee kills the dad because the dad's going to kill his daughter, Ruby, which is also like a color of red, much like the outfit in the opening.
Good point. Yeah.
And the devil. The
Ruby,
devil is known
blood.
to be red.
Yeah.
And Ruby is blood as well. Anyways, moving on from that, I just put that together in my head right now as well. But we've got the mom who is like, I have to complete this, right? Which I think she gives her a choice. And this is, of course, what the devil's whole ultimate plan is the corruption. He loves to corrupt, right? And it's like, I'll let you save your daughter, but your daughter is going to have to do something terrible in return. And it's like his plan has been finalized here when he gets a mother or a daughter to kill her own mother. But when she's like, Mom, the mom says, don't call me that. And when she says, don't call me that, her voice distorts more and more.
Yeah.
And then her face distorts. And then she goes. So I don't think she has autonomy in that moment. Her mom is also like a vessel. And when she tries to like reject it, it takes over her body and ultimately makes Lee kill her own mother. Which I think, as I said, it's like the perfect coup d'etat for the devil. It's all been leading up to this moment where instead of getting his final birthday girl, she sacrifices her own mother in that. Anyway, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that's great to point out that it's not really her mom in the end that she kills. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because she's been corrupted so much and is potentially even just fully possessed. But there's definitely something to unpack with just the domestic abuse, the family violence that he makes everybody do, and how that affects. I mean, the children die, but Lee is the survivor that has to deal with it, and Carrie Ann too, right? Like, these people that live on after such horrible things happen, and how devastating it is to them.
But also, point here to note with all of this is that what was I saying? Shit.
Oh, no.
No, I know what I was going to say. So there's so when the mom goes to shoot her doll for her, right, while she's still alive, it lets her. It also lets the coroner or whatever that guy cut into the ball. So Lee goes to destroy Ruby's doll, and the gun just clicks multiple times. Like the devil won't let it happen. Now, you could argue that the gun was empty. I don't think that's the case, because I don't think she fires many shots. I'd have to count the shots. Maybe she counted 6. I shot him 6 times. I don't think so, because I feel like she would have just, like, to me, she would have just, like, bashed the fucking doll's head in and then, got a hammer and tried to break it open. But, like, she sees, like, no, this gun's loaded. It's not gonna let me break this doll. I think at that point, Lee is free. But she's free with all of what just happened. She just killed this dude, and she just killed her mom, and it's like the devil's laughing. Like, ha 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 ha.
Tremendous.
Like, you're free. Have fun with your life now.
A tremendous amount of guilt and knowledge and awareness. But
Ruby ultimately is going to end up like the girl in the insane asylum who ends up killing herself. Like, I think she is going to be controlled by this doll that the devil's not going to let anyone destroy. Right? Now, Lee, maybe she'll protect it, or maybe she will become the next Longlegs. I don't know where that ultimately goes. And with Longlegs, singing and blowing a kiss and being like, "Hail Satan" at the end of the movie, which is part of his interrogation footage, because they said it went on for like 20 more minutes like that or whatever. I think that's just part of that footage. It really is just like, I don't know what to take from it as far as her, but I do think she's free of it, and now she just has to live with the guilt of everything. But where Ruby lies, do I want a sequel? No, probably not. I'm good with everything as we have it right now. Would I take a director's cut with more stuff? Depends on the stuff. Sure, if it's great. If it's not, I guess I could just watch it and then be like, no, this isn't the version I want. I'll go back to the other one. So, I'll take it. But ultimately, I'm not 100% yet on what's going on with Ruby and that ending. Like, is she now going to end up like Carrie Ann?
Yeah.
Will she become the next Longlegs? Like, as I said, maybe that's what broke the cycle for Longlegs originally, and he was the original Ruby, and now he grew up to become Longlegs for the next generation, and oh boy, the next generation would be now, right? That's the 90s. 30 years later, you'd be in the 2020s. So maybe Ruby's out now. Maybe there will be a sequel with Ruby.
I would definitely watch a sequel. I would watch a director's cut. I would watch deleted scenes. I would watch lots more.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the story as it is now, but I think that I definitely think there's potential to go more into things, and that's exciting. Whether that would be in the form of another film or just maybe more content like they've released online. Although I think everything, like the website was all marketing, so I don't know. But I really loved everything that we read on the website. I think there's a lot to talk about in this. I mean, I know we already have been talking for maybe an hour or so, maybe a little less, but I just think there's a lot to go through.
If you are as obsessed with this as we are, definitely do yourself a favor. Do go to the birthdaymurders.net. Look up that stuff. It'll give you a lot more lore. They have added to it since we went because they added something after the film came out. So I have to assume that is going to maybe get into spoiler territory. Possibly. In some way, shape, or form. We're going to get some kind of message that gives us a deeper meaning. Yeah. Probably should have went beforehand to see if I could decipher the code, crack it, because you have to crack codes in order to open up certain files on the website, and that can take a lot of finagling. But if you want, you can just go to Reddit, and that'll help you out for sure. But that's fun for anyone who wants to get deeper into this. But I think this is definitely the best film of this year for me personally. Maybe that won't be the case for a lot of people who wanted this to be more of a traditional thing. I know there was like some nods to the films that I had already mentioned the nods to Silence of the Lambs, but there's obviously another one here for Seven, as in that we don't ever see the killer really, and then he turns himself in, very Seven-esque, but it takes a deviation from the typical like police procedurals, crime thrillers like a Silence of the Lambs or a Seven, and it is its own thing, so people might be disappointed with how it was presented, especially with how it was marketed, and I think this is just an iconic, brilliant film that I will love to watch multiple times in the future, and I look forward to doing so. But those are our thoughts on our first watch. I'm glad that I took the notes and took the time to really think about things, and thank you for joining me and adding on to some of this. That's great. And now it's your guys' turn to do so in the comments. Add anything that you think that we missed or you think we're wrong on or just slightly off on. I definitely look forward to reading those. More theories are definitely, I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, to summarize, the way you beat Longlegs, the way you survive Longlegs is don't be from a religious family. Don't be a married couple. Be separated. Don't have your birthday on the 14th of any month. And
I'm the 16th.
I'm the 28th.
Jeremy is the 14th. Our buddy Jeremy.
Sucks to be him.
Yeah.
As a child being killed by Longlegs. By his dad.
I think he's past 9 years old, so I think he's all right.
That's it. Those are the only tips we have for how to survive.
My kids are the 4th.
Yeah, they're lucky.
I got close. Yeah, I got close.
We're good.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the comments. Let us know anything more.
No, that's it.
All right. Long legs out as I stand up and my legs are like this long. How wonderful would that be?
That'd be scary.
I keep like
no.
Bye. All right, guys.
Bye.